Morning.
Morning.
My condolences to the Dawson family, the Bell family, other relatives, friends, and loved ones. This is a tall order.
Yes.
Very, very tall order.
Yes. Yes.
And I had to touch on what Gloria just said. It wasn't easy getting in that inner circle.
Not.
That I know.
Yes.
Mrs. Dawson was born Marjorie Louise Bell on June 28, 1918. We all know that she was devoutly religious and a proud descendant of African American freedom seekers,
Yep.
also known as runaway slaves. As an adult, my memories about Mrs. Dawson began in the summer of 1996, when I was starting out as a historian for the Salem Chapel.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Dawson was here with my Aunt Ruth Bell. Two newspaper reporters were on hand. They were interviewing them about local Black history. One reporter had to go, so we had to get the pictures done right then and there. And I'm standing at the back of the church just watching these older women, both when Mrs. Dawson was almost 80, my Aunt Ruth was in her 80s. And they're standing there by that plaque, having their picture taken. And you know the church folks, especially when they get older, sometimes I'm standing here. You know, I'm standing here. I'm close to it. This is going to be good, and this is going to take a while. And it did. I listened as they talked about growing up in St. Catharines. They had fond memories about both churches, about the community, and of course, they were speaking about the old folks as they knew them. Emancipation Day was a big hit. Always came across well. And then it was time for Mrs. Dawson to sit down and for this reporter to talk to her. Now, I'm just coming back and forth from Toronto, learning about Black history. I had papers passed to me, 1, 2, 3, you're on. This is from Helen. It's about Harriet Tubman. And then Mrs. Dawson sat down and she started talking about Reverend Anthony Burns. And it's like, what? Who is that? No clue.
Mm-hmm.
In my own backyard.
Yep.
Because history was contained.
Mm-hmm.
It was just amongst us.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't put out there. That didn't start until the 80s. And that didn't start until, of course, Harvey Fair was walking around the community, nudging everybody, let's share this history.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time I heard Reverend Burns' story being told, but it was the excitement and the joy in Mrs. Dawson, not only about him, but about Zion Baptist Church. Then when she said, oh yeah, and the marker that's at the cemetery gates, and it was like,
Wow.
and then she went on about the story, about how the St. Catherine's Lincoln Historical Society plaqued Reverend Burns in the early 60s to honor him at Victoria Lawn Cemetery gates. Now, just imagine my head swirling.
Mm-hmm.
You get so much about Tubman. You know, you hear the little things when you're growing up, but everybody just lets it go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So after the interview, I approached Mrs. Dawson and I asked if I could interview her. I needed to learn.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to know why, and I explained that I had history material that was passed from Helen, but knew nothing about Reverend Burns.
Mm-hmm.
Then she said, what are you going to do with the information? And I told her that I was going to include it in the tourism at the B&E church. Dead silence. Talk about uncomfortable.
Mm.
You're going to do what? Well, I'd like to put it downstairs on the display. You know, incorporate it.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that. And she started to tell me, you know, when your grandpa Chester died, about 1969, I drove your grandmother to this church every Sunday until 1986 till she passed.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. Okay. So now I'm keeping up my appeal. When I interview you, she's leaving the church. She said, well, maybe you can call me next week. Okay. A few days later, now it's Sunday service. Service is finished. June Anderson, I want to talk to you. Mrs. Dawson's sister.
Mm-hmm.
What about it? told Marjorie you want to put Zion Baptist Church and Anthony Burns down here in the church? Yes. Did you tell them? Tell who? Did you tell them here that you want to do that? No. Now it's time for the conversation. We're all downstairs in fellowship. Mrs. Anderson, not saying a word. And she's listening to this. And it's my appeal. What are you talking about? The history is more than Harriet Tubman. And it's more than Salem Chapel. And it's more than one or two families.
Sure is.
Oh yeah. Hour long. So then finally Mrs. Anderson got up. She said, well, I'm leaving now. You can call my sister tomorrow. Done deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
No kidding. Mike, and it was territorial.
Yes.
My uncle had been squirreling away old historic books from the time Charlie Dorsey died in 1972, about 1972, and they were transported from the attic to his yard every year. Every year because of the change of seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, okay, Uncle, you got these books, let's make some display cases. Tourists can see these. Sure, no problem. Made the display cases, put the books out. A couple Sundays later, Mrs. Anderson got a book in that display case that belongs to Zion Baptist Church.
Oh.
And we want it. Ask Uncle Harry, you're the historian now. Harry, I have no problem with it. 3 weeks. 3 weeks for that book to leave here, go to Zion Baptist Church. Well, we got a problem here, folks. This is not territorial. Now I'm going to reach out to all the families. We're incorporating all their history. Everybody. That's how it went. No more of this. This is a one-sided show. And that's how it's been since that time. Amen.
Amen.
So, Mrs. Dawson, as we know, was affectionately known as Mother Dawson of the Zion Baptist Church. And she embraced me just because of that simple change. Because growing up here in St. Catherine's, even though everybody went to Zion Baptist for Sunday school or they went to the BME, there was a rift and it was territorial. And it's like, no, it can't be that way. So, after that, for the next 20 years, I'd say to my aunt and uncle, especially when my aunt was still alive, if she couldn't answer the question or my uncle couldn't, you better call Marjorie. And that's how it went.
Yeah.
Shortly after that conversation, it was time for me to go visit Mrs. Dawson. And I learned a lot about her. She married Edward Dawson in 1942 at the Welland Avenue Presbyterian Church. And she told me, yeah, Pudgy moved down here with your father in 1938. McKinnon's Industries put out a big ad, said, oh, the colored men come and work here. And they did. And for a brief time, they lived in the little cabins on the Nicholson property on Vine Street. They had nowhere to go, but they were still embraced by the community. So they lived there for a while. And then, asking Mrs. Dawson more questions, she said, I got Pudgy. We got married. Well, how did you feel when you went to war? Hardest time of my life. What do you mean? I prayed every day. I didn't want to be a widow. I was a young bride.
Yeah.
Every day. And then it hit me. No, she's serious. She's devoutly religious. She prayed every day. These weren't loose words coming out.
Yes, yes, amen.
She was worried about her husband. She did not want to be a widow. They were married for almost 50 years. And she was very proud when General Motors named the golf tournament after him.
Yes.
She was a devout mother, wife, and Christian.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was at her house and she was showing me pictures. I mean, she had all kinds of pictures. And I spoke to Dennis last night because I recall a little picture of him being in a cowboy hat. And I said, oh, it's when I had a crown. I remember one of a cowboy hat. Well, all I can tell you is she said at that time she wasn't letting had no other women show up for her baby. Make sure they were chosen. She also said that when she had a strong connection with the community. So she also said every time she spoke about the house and the property that they built on Pelham Avenue, the home they built, was that Mel Nicholson came and he dug the foundation. And the community gathered together and they helped. And then, of course, there was the memory, this one lived there, your grandma lived there, this one lived down here. I'm going to touch on what Gloria also said about her volunteerism. When she told the story to me, I was a candy striper.
Oh,
You know how
yeah.
racism was
That's
in
right.
Captain's.
That's right.
Look what happened, Dave. She went and got this education, ended up at hers up. They were
That's
holding
right.
us back.
That's right.
Mrs. Dawson always combated racism. And if she could have been, and if it was forbidden, she could have got the job, she would have been a nurse. But she toughed it out. She toughed it out. She wasn't going to let nobody hold her back.
Yeah.
There was an incident that I heard about in St. Catharines in 1959. A racial incident, and it led to the formation of the Human Rights Commission for Ontario, which also went on to become one of the federal Human Rights Commissions. So I'm asking her questions, and throughout this, and I was always curious. She said, "Your uncle said you were nosy." It's not being nosy, I'm curious. You want the
Yes.
historical accuracies of the past. So it's got nothing to do with being nosy. So then she told me her version of events and how this racialized incident went down and how everybody was in an uproar. Her husband came out, the whole community came out. Helen Nicholson Smith was carrying one of the batons, combat this racism. The town was divided, council was divided. It was a big event. And then she said, "Your Uncle Russ." And Mrs. Dawson, as we know, never said a bad word about anybody.
Right.
Never cursed. Never nothing. But when I hear other people talk about my Uncle Russ, it's a big mouth, loud mouth man, wouldn't shut up. All she said was, he was loud. He was loud. He was extremely vocal. Racism, she often spoke about here in the city, but she always included the change. So, for example, when Barack Obama was elected, oh my God, we talk about something was happy. Everything was great. 3 years later, you see what that Tea Party's doing? You see what they're doing to him? Why is Donald Trump saying that he wasn't born in America? I know people who talked about racism. We all know it. We all know people who, well, I can tell you this. I know very few who felt like Mrs. Dawson, even if it was across the pond. It affected her. With her volunteerism, going back to the hospital, I asked her one day, "Why did you do that?" Like, what made you? Because she was excited. She was getting the award that Gloria spoke about. I'm a Christian. You have to care for the sick and shut in.
Yes. Amen. Yes.
Is that why you do Franklin Grant Samaritan shoe boxes? Absolutely. No child
Yes.
will be left out, and everybody needs to know Jesus.
Yes.
And I mean, one time I went to her house and she had at least 40 shoe boxes.
Yeah.
She would go to everybody collecting these shoe boxes.
Yeah.
Get the phone call. "How many shoe boxes are you going to do this year?" "Okay, I will. And she'd mark them off. It wasn't a thing about, what, Zion Baptist Church is going to be number one and giving the shoe boxes. That wasn't her. It was about children being left without in the spirit of Christmas, that everybody should know the Lord.
Yes.
And that's why she did it. And she did it faithfully. Black history came from one person, her daddy. He put it in her. You have got to know. You have got to know. In 2003, after her sister-in-law Jean put the entire family genealogy together, she said, "You got to read this paper too." And it came from a gentleman by the name of Ray Thompson, who was a member of the Ontario Black History Society. And Mr. Archie Bell interviewed him, 7 pages. And he's speaking about how the hospital put eye drops in his eye, and it ruined his eye, and it blinded him, and I couldn't get through it. Mrs. Dawson's telling me the story, and she said, "Yeah, well, sometimes the hospitals things happen, but she said, you gotta go with what my father said. Incidences do occur, but the way Ray transcribed this conversation, he wasn't angry because he gave it to the Lord.
Yep.
Was meant to be. But in that document, there is the story of Benjamin Fletcher. And it's like, Mrs. Dawson, you keep talking about this grandma by the name of Grandma Cummings. You're talking about Clara Harper who married Benjamin Fletcher. Well, I don't know. Your father's saying right here, she was married twice. Fletcher, then Cummings. So it's like, okay. She said, well, Benjamin Fletcher Sr., but there was Benny Jr. too. Yes. Yes, I got that. Ellie and George married. So now we're getting to this little bit. I said Benjamin Sr. was a member of the Fugitive Aid Society when Harriet Tubman was here in St. Catharines. Well, I know that. Well, how come you never said nothing before? Why am I reading this? Why didn't you mention it to Owen when he was writing Niagara's Freedom Trip? He didn't ask.
Yeah. That's your tell you. That's right. Yeah. No.
Okay. You had to ask the question. So she also told me a couple of other nuggets of information about Tubman that was passed to her father. That Tubman's brother had a house across the street. Historian comes along, these are oral histories. Historian comes along. William Henry Stewart had a house across the street from the B&B church. Wow. Unbelievable. We knew about the boarding house, and she said, but Harriet Tubman, she also had lived in that brick house there at the corner of St. Paul, Geneva, and Queenston Street. And I said, really? She said, yeah, then Confederates took it. What are you talking about? So then, doing a search, recruiting a couple of friends from the Historical Society. Oh yes. No connection so far yet to Tubman, because can't find him in the assessment records. But Gershom Wright definitely don't have that boarding house, and after we passed, Confederates, when they were here as Confederate agents, they had that boarding house. They had that brick house. And it's like,
Wow.
On her mother's side of the family, she always said, my mother's family came from Harper, Powell, Pettiford. To her, and I said it one day, do you think we're 6 degrees away from Josiah Henson? She said, probably everybody is. Look at all the kids he had. They married everywhere. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, we're there. So when her sister-in-law Jean gave her that genealogy, she was overjoyed because everything was now laid out. And she could proceed with it, and she had it documented. We're talking about 2003, Ancestry.ca is just getting started. But I'm grateful that she gave me a copy of it because from there, I can continue on. And I did. And this was just recently. When she was interviewed for the Niagara's Freedom Trail book by Owen Thomas, she said how Isabel Williamson gave the Raymond Street house to Zion Baptist Church. So she bequeathed it to him. So that day we're having a conversation. This is a number of years ago, and it's like, were they white folks? And she just looked at me. She said, some of us can pass for white. That's all she said. I said, you talking about the jewelry store people downtown? They're black folks? She said, I don't know. I just know there's a connection to the jewelry store. Then, of course, the conversation went on to Clarabelle Williams, the faith healer, who was at Zion Baptist Church. They had no minister at the time, so she filled in. So I said, Mr. Dawson, I'm a little bit disturbed about this, and I'm going to have to try and do research. For a number of years, again, Ancestry wasn't available, the records weren't there. So it's like, who is this woman? So let's recruit a friend from the Historical Society, help me research this. Isabel Williamson was married to Isaac Shadd, Mary Ann Shadd's nephew. Mary Ann Shadd Carey was married here on January 39th, 1856. Her sister, Amelia, attended Zion Baptist Church, and she married David Williamson, who owned a jewelry store.
There you go.
Yeah. The Williamson connection and the Shadd connection. And I remember another person from the Historical Society. He writes a weekly article. He called me one day, and these two incidents do not connect, and he said, I just read an obituary about a shad woman who just died recently here in St. Catharines. And I said, yeah, probably one of the shads, but if you talk to my uncle, he'll tell you the story how they passed for white and wouldn't have nothing to do with us anymore. Couldn't even go near them. And he said, you're joking. And I said, no. I said, some people did that when they escaped because they were so multiracially mixed that if they could assimilate, they did.
Mm-hmm.
Some did not, and some do it today.
Mm-hmm.
The gentleman named Dennis Gannon, he was just shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, it happens. Not everybody's that proud of their history.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the connection. So the Raymond Street Baptist Church comes from the Shad and Williamson family. I was blown away, and that was just a new discovery over a month ago.
Mm.
And that came from Mrs. Dawson. Had she not had Owen included in the Niagara's Freedom Trail, we wouldn't even know it today. And thanks to other people helping research the history. So Mrs. Dawson was an important person who was interviewed for the Niagara's Freedom Trail. So you'll find a lot of that information. She was also very instrumental for the exhibit that went up at the St. Catharines Museum. Mm-hmm. She gave a lot of her time and her history. She shared it. Not only did she share it with the museum, she shared it with the B&E Church as well. Mm-hmm. She was also a member of the Anthony Burns Committee and, of course, the Central Ontario Network for Black History. Mm-hmm. She often gave her trust to other committee members if she couldn't attend, but you would always have to ask her before you said yes or no, yay or nay for Zion Baptist Church, what the decision was going to be, because she just wasn't going to let anybody go make that decision without her input. Mm-hmm. Another incident that occurred with my Aunt Ruth, because Mrs. Dawson was very active, and she was a member of the Order of the Eastern Star.
Yes.
Also known as the Five Stars.
Yes.
Well, it was, again, 2003, 2004, my Aunt Ruth gave me this picture. All these women dressed up in 1933, said, oh yes, grand. My Aunt Ruth says to me, if you're so smart, you figured this out. Okay? So now it's like, who's living? My Aunt Ruth wasn't going to share nothing. And Order of the Eastern Star, just like any fraternity, Freemasonry, zip the lips, no talking. So now it's time to go down the list. My Aunt Ruth's not going to tell me nothing. My Aunt June said, beat it. Now it's time to call Miss Dawson, and she said, I can't talk about that. Well, I need to know what I'm supposed to be looking at in this picture. I see my Aunt Claire Jameson, I see Mabel Nicholson, what's in this picture? Who else is alive? Mother. She said, well, let's try Norma. So now it's time to talk Norma Nicholson. She said, well, I can't tell you anything, but maybe you should look beyond the women. And it's like, what? It's just a bunch of women standing there. Maybe look beyond the women. So then now I'm going back to all of them. Why am I supposed to look beyond the women? What am I supposed to be looking at? All I see are sashes. Well, went to Mrs. Dawson again, and she said, I can't help you. Nobody could help me. Okay, I'm taking a drive out to chat and see if anybody knows. Went for my little visit, spoke to Wendy Robinson, some of you know her, and it's like, I'm not telling you nothing. We were not connected, so now it's time to read. And then I came across, what do you mean Harriet Tubman was buried with the Queen Victoria pit in the shawl? That's not what they're saying out in Philadelphia. Everybody's writing these things about Harriet Tubman being buried with her shawl. No, the shawl's now in a museum. The pin wasn't there. One professor from Syracuse University wrote that the Jubilee pin from Queen Victoria was not buried with her. So then I go back to the picture. It's 1933, there's the pin, what did you do with it? No conversation. No conversation. Where's the pin? So they all confirmed it's the pin, but where's the pin now? Nobody knows. I suspect it's in Chatham, but nobody will say where it is. It's either in Chatham or Philadelphia. Hopefully it'll make its way, and if anybody's out there listening and you can pass it on, African American Museum in Washington, D.C., please. That's where it should be. But one professor, a white man from Syracuse, New York, confirmed, yeah, and was buried with her.
Mm.
So some of the wonderful events with Mrs. Dawson was, of course, getting her hair done.
No.
Always had to be dressed to the nines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Taking her to Mrs. Porter's house. There were other people who did her hair, and I asked Dennis, he said, oh yeah. He used to go, it was one named Maria. I used to sit on the floor and have her hair done. When it was my turn to take her, Mrs. Porter, right, was the assemblyman's wife in Niagara Falls, New York. So I'm thinking, wow, where are we going and who is this woman? Well, Mrs. Dawson introduced me fantastically, magnificent. Hair was done because, that's how she was. Special occasion, whether it was Christmas, Happy Bird celebration, a birthday, you name it, somebody was taking her over the river to get her hair done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it always was. Mm-hmm. On one of those trips, I said to her, so if you were baptized into B&E as a baby, what made you switch churches? Oh, I got sick and tired of getting beat up after Sunday school and that all those girls scratch my eye then. Scratch. After Sunday school? She said, yes. Well, it's no different for me either. I get punched out at Sunday school too, so nothing changed. Oh, yeah. It was a little nightmare. All these little kids running around unattended. But she said she was heartfelt that there was nobody at Zion Baptist. Nobody taking care of her.
Mm-hmm.
There was Clarabelle Williams, she was struggling. Membership was gone. It was turned into an electric company. The church doors were opening and closing. They had no idea what they were going to do. So when the property on Raymond Street was bequeathed, of course, they went there. But when the church was torn down in 1958, nobody knows where the Burns marker went. She had no idea. Somebody confiscated it, and she figured that the construction developers took that plaque, and that was something that she would have liked to have had.
Mm-hmm.
But it was gone. But she was very heartbroken. So, as I got to know Mrs. Dawson, we decided that, because it's going to be a shared history, we're going to do a walk-a-thon. So we did walk-a-thons from 98, 99, and 2000. And then, of course, a follow came, but we raised money for both churches. But the first time I went to her house, and I just don't want to repeat what everybody said. Open that front door and you were Blue Jay way. Everything. And she often talked about Joe Carter.
Yeah.
Because that was her sport. And then from there, it went into the Negro League Baseball when it was local here. And she would tell you stories about what they were doing,
Mm-hmm.
how they were behaving, when white folks were upset. She could name community families and where they lived. Just point it out on a map. The Lindo family, the Grant family, this person did this person did that. But never gossip.
Mm-hmm.
Never gossip.
Mm-hmm.
And never a curse word. Never.
Mm-hmm.
When this church became a heritage site in 1980, and I just went and checked the plaque this morning, because she repeated the story a few times. She said, yeah, they put on that plaque, the only surviving black church in the city of St. Catharines. I was mad, I was hurt, I was upset, and she was heated. Her husband, he wrote a letter to the editor to tell them all off. That is not true. Zion Baptist Church existed, and it's still here today.
Mm-hmm.
That was straightened out real quick. But could they get the city to change the plaque? No.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go out there, it's still there, and it's wrong. Another error plaque at the front of the church. She also told me about times that my Aunt Audrey and my nan from Toronto, when they would come down from St. Catharines, they'd come here, but my Aunt Audrey didn't like being in the B&E church because she was a Baptist. So they'd go worship at Zion Baptist Church, and that's where she felt most comfortable. And then Mrs. Dawson, because I never really made the connection, she said, but your aunt was different because everybody from Toronto was different. My husband was from Toronto, so their house was, they were uppity.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it now because my father used to say, something's wrong with her folks. I was like, okay, I got it. One of the greatest things that she said with her husband's connection to the B&E church is that his uncle, Thomas Dawson, was general superintendent from 1932 to 1949. Yeah, that's amazing history.
Mm-hmm.
I had to reconfirm that with her because I thought, perhaps father, perhaps something, a type of relative, but yeah, she confirmed. It was an uncle.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I collected the history, she made me promise that I would never forget about Zion Baptist Church. And I said I would not.
Right.
Her greatest worry, though, was the fact that she didn't have a lot of faith in young people because times were changing.
Yes.
She always worried, what's going to happen to Zion Baptist Church when I'm gone?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a woman who's getting in her car every day, going to Zion Baptist Church, checking the mail, checking
Yes.
everything. She was not going to let it go, and she was worried. So it would come to, Beth, Julie, Jeffrey, Heather, who's going to take care of the church? And it's like, you know how you put your trust in the Lord? You're going to have to trust that somebody's going to step up. That was a daily worry for Mrs. Dawson.
Mm-hmm.
She would never stop honoring Reverend Burns because he was close to her heart and he was famous.
Yeah.
The most famous member of Zion Baptist Church. There was a day that I had to go break news to her about two other preachers that were there. Reverend John Anderson and Reverend Richard Godfrey. I had to tell her they're bad actors.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to hear that. She said, you know what, you can tell me anything, but don't tell me that. Here's the newspaper accounts, you can read them. She was heartbroken when the Faces Street Baptist Church was
Yes.
She had a close connection to Faces Street Baptist Church.
Yes.
She said, I never want to see that happen to Zion Baptist Church, and I don't want to see it happen to VME. I hope young people come together.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. We all know that she kept driving. She stopped driving on the highway when she was 90. She gave up her license when she was 95. But every year after she was 80, it was a worry about that driver's license test. So when I called her, she was studying and she was worried about that test. I always used to joke with her that she'd make it to 100, and she said, well, we'll see. We'll see. I said, no, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a time, a life learning lesson. I always clung to the older folks. Like I was doing with her, my Uncle Jim was sick and he was hospitalized. Me and my cousin got into a rift. So I said, you know what? I'm just not going to go back. I need this time. I'm just not going to go back. I mean, people are trying to help you out, and this is the thanks that we get.
Yeah.
The only person I told was my Uncle Erie. Day after my Uncle Jim died, well, the service, when we had the wake here, I got a phone call from Mrs. Dawson. And she said, why did you do that? You didn't hurt your cousin. You didn't even hurt Jim.